Song Ciyu wore books and became a vicious female supporting character in ancient romance novels. In the original book, her father doted on her, her mother loved her, and even the marriage she wanted could easily be fulfilled. So the spoiled girl not only planted sisters, but also dared to poison her relatives. Eventually, the evil thing was revealed and she died under the sword of the original book man. Even after she died, she could not be at peace. She was whipped to death, leaving her completely unrecognizable end. If Song Ciyu were still a reader, she would definitely clap her hands and cheer, waving the flag and shouting, saying, "You deserve it." But why did such a character fall on her head? Is it difficult to achieve success because she shares the same name and surname as the original owner? Song Ciyu. That's why I'm the biggest victim. After lying down for 2 days, Song Ciyu calmly considered and decided to change her previous fate. It's okay. It's not scary to end up with a wrong seed, what's scary is knowing your destiny and not knowing how to seize opportunities. Now that it's her, what about the supporting role? This time, she should firmly hold the aura of the leading role, and then try to be strong, earn a lot of money, and seek power. Finally, she can always make a good day. The inspirational female lead changes her life online. Keywords of the novel. Dressed as a malicious female supporting character, after being worn out, it really smells good without a pop-up window. Dressed as a malicious female supporting character, after being worn out, it really smells good. Download the full text. Chapter 1. The Deep Sin of Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Deep Sin of Me. When Song Ciyu found out that she had become a malicious supporting actress while wearing a book, she almost laughed down from the bed. She believed that she had always been kind and had never done anything bad, and never expected to be labeled as malicious one day. Becoming a malicious female supporting character doesn't matter, heaven knows how comfortable it is to be without moral constraints. Oh my goodness, did you forget when you made this arrangement? She clearly remembers the ultimate fate of the original owner. Isn't this harming her? Madam, the illegitimate son has brought it. The personal maid hurriedly walked in from outside and promptly delivered the message to Song Ciyu's ear. A illegitimate son. Song Ciyu lay in bed, thinking back for a while before realizing the origin of this illegitimate son. She was originally a concubine of the Prime Minister's mansion, but due to jealousy towards her eldest daughter, she used the move to marry the fourth prince as the legitimate wife. It was indeed a bit of effort for her to obtain this position as a concubine. Unfortunately, the fourth prince was originally someone he had a crush on, and even the legitimate wife did not receive the favor of her husband. As a result, the original owner's label as a malicious supporting woman began to take effect, successfully allowing the fourth prince's beloved concubine to leave her son for her mother. As the hostess of the mansion, Song Ciyu naturally brought this child to her side. TSK, I really have a deep sin. Although she doesn't want to be a kind-hearted person and become a victim, she doesn't want to fight someone else's life just to get a man's favor. Especially the deceased concubine, who is the biological mother of the male lead and the white moonlight of her husband. Everyone knows that the only one who can defeat the white moonlight is the dead white moonlight. You're confused, to the original owner. Bring him in, be careful not to bump into him. Song Ciyu let out a mournful cry in her heart and quickly instructed the maid to carry him into the room. After receiving the strange look from the maid Jinjin, Song Ciyu waved her hand helplessly and said, "You heard me right, go quickly." Jinjin. Yes, madam. Song Ciyu climbed down straight from the bed with a carp, and the protagonist climbed up. She needs to perform well. She just forgot that the illegitimate son is still young. This chubby kid is quite cute. Song Ciyu extended her finger and poked her cheap son who was still in his infancy, praising him sincerely. Madam, didn't you say when you saw him a few days ago that he looked as ugly as his deceased aunt? Zhen tilted her head and looked at Song Ciyu with an incredulous expression. Cough, the original owner is really talking nonsense. Go see this kid without a filter, he is indeed very good. Looking. To be honest, the original owner's filter is somewhat indistinguishable from beauty and ugliness. But it fits her identity very well. After all, everything looks ugly when the heart is ugly. Do you think he's ugly? Song Ciyu smiled and pinched the chubby boy's cheek. Her heart was beautiful. Junjun was asked by Song Ciyu to stay put. She was Song Ciyu's person, and Sangguan followed her. Song Ciyu praised him for being cute and also said he was ugly, so Junjun naturally didn't know how to answer. Alright, no matter what we say now, he's still half of my son, to be honest. Madam, since he was sent to Madam's side, he has naturally been getting better and better, and now he looks much more obedient than before. Junjun quickly took the conversation when she saw her say so. Junjun's words are beautiful, and indeed the girls who follow the bad guys are a bit clever. Song Ciyu nodded on her own, letting him stay by her side, accumulating more merits, so that she could have a better life in the future. She remembers the final ending of the original protagonist. When the original protagonist killed the fourth prince, a loophole was revealed. Not only was it discovered by the male protagonist that she had killed her father, but even her mother died at her hands. The male protagonist was instantly angry and anxious. In the end, he stabbed him with a sword, gouged out his heart, and even died without peace. Not only was his body whipped, but he was also thrown into the wilderness. TSK, this little guy is also brave enough to strike hard. But then again, if anyone dares to treat themselves like this, she still has to greet his whole family. First, take him to the wet nurse's place, then prepare a stroller to put in my room, and then I will personally watch him. This is a matter of life and must be taken seriously. Madam, I'll go handle it now. Junjun bent down and then walked out holding the child. Madam, the prince is back. Just as Song Ciyu was about to take a break, another maid rushed up from outside in a hurry to report to her. That seemed like something remarkable had happened, but upon hearing it, it was only the prince who had returned to his mansion. Song Ciyu nodded first and then waved her hand to indicate that she knew. Just go back, it's not a big deal, and this prince can't be considered the protagonist. Husband and madam, won't you prepare? The servant girl also looked dumbfounded. Don't do it, I need to rest. That cheap son is the real male lead, just take care of him yourself. As for this prince, there's no need to rush to please him, it's exhausting. But it's already late at this time. When the prince returns to the mansion, he needs to eat with his wife. This is a rule, and madam, aren't you hungry? Juju asked with a worried expression on her face. Song Ciyu knew that in Juju's heart, she should quickly tidy up her beauty and then run towards her husband. Although the fourth prince is good, she just needs to have a son, so she really doesn't need to have a husband anymore. Gu, it's okay not to say you're hungry, just say you're hungry. Never mind, let's go. Song Ciyu turned around and walked towards the dining room in the mansion, following the rules and regulations. In ancient times, there were many things to do. Whenever she wears modern literature, the first thing she does is go to the Civil Affairs Bureau for divorce. Madam, you haven't dressed up yet. Junjun ran over from behind Song Ciyu. Naturally beautiful, there is no need to dress up deliberately. Although she is a malicious female supporting character, one thing is still very comforting, that is, she also has real beauty in her body. I have seen the prince. Entering the dining room, the fourth prince had already taken his seat in the main seat. Song Ciyu quickly bowed to him and then sat down according to his memory. The man on the main seat is extremely handsome, no wonder the original owner insisted on marrying him. Setting aside everything else, choosing him is still very discerning, at least pleasing to the eye. Unfortunately, I don't want to be a man who pretends to be someone else. Although he was the person the original owner had put in a lot of effort to marry, it's fortunate that the original owner didn't succeed. Now she is still a beautiful woman. Qin Heyuan frowned, looking a bit unhappy. Song Ciyu knew that it was probably because she came late, which made him unhappy. He raised his hand to signal for the servants to serve the dishes first, and then turned his gaze to Song Ciyu. How about Yener? Yen Qin Li Yen is her painless son. Excellent. Song Ciyu stared at the door and answered his questions, while choosing to ignore his displeasure. She now only felt that the speed of serving the dishes was a bit slow. What happened in the mansion? He seemed less accustomed to Song Ciyu's changes than Jinjinju. Everything is fine. What do you want to do? If something goes wrong, there must be a demon. He frowned and looked at Song Ciyu, wishing to see her through from beginning to end. After all, according to the image of the original owner in the past, she had already posted it herself when he entered the house, but she is so indifferent today, there must be a problem. Note: male and female leaders have a cleanliness of 1v1. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. My nature is not bad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. My nature is not bad. Song Ciyu's father doted on his concubine and destroyed his wife, so even though she was an illegitimate daughter, he treated her better than his legitimate daughter. The reason why Qin Heyuan married her was because he needed the support of the Prime Minister's office, so even though she usually caused trouble, he would endure it time and time again. Prince, I usually make a lot of noise, but my nature is not bad. This sentence can be said for the original owner without conscience. He continued to frown, and a mocking curve appeared at the corner of his mouth. He gestured for Song Ciyu to continue speaking. I will not talk too much about your affairs in the future. Yener cannot really be without a mother. He is still so young. I want to raise him well, so I can choose not to have my own child. What does the prince think? Although it was a request for his approval, Song Ciyu knew that this was not an excessive requirement. Based on the influence of my mother's family, adopting Yener under the name of my wife was the best source. In this way, he and his beloved woman's son can become the legitimate sons of Mingshang. Moreover, she also proposed the condition of not having children, which means that no one can force him to be close to Song Ciyu anymore. Heaven will help him, how can he not agree? The reason why Qin Heyuan sent Yener to Song Ciyu's side, but did not actually adopt her, was because he was afraid that she would not take good care of Yener. She has said so now, and there is no reason to disagree. For Song Ciyu, the fate of the malicious female supporting role was a bit tragic. Not only was she seeking comfort, but also for this hard-earned vitality, she wanted to firmly embrace Yener. My life is on the brink of extinction, who still wants to have a child? You need to know what you're saying. Although Qin Heyuan couldn't wait to agree quickly, he was still a bit wary of whether this woman was playing tricks. Although he didn't say it clearly, he also knew that Song Ciyu had malicious intentions towards his mother and daughter. Don't worry, my lord. I have carefully thought about it. I really like Yener, and I have my own opinion on how to treat him in the future. If the prince wants to give Yener dignity, it is most appropriate to be by my side. Song Ciyu met Qin Heyuan's eyes, and everything she said was true, not afraid of being exposed. Now that this child is her only life-saving straw, she naturally needs to be treated well. However, his mother was ultimately killed by her current body. TSK, this matter can only be seen step by step. Tomorrow, when my king goes to court, you will come with me into the temple. As soon as these words were spoken, Song Ciyu understood in her heart that they had been said. Okay. As they spoke, food was also served one after another. Braised duck with soy sauce, smoked chicken, hot steamed dumplings, pancakes, bean cake. She thought she could understand why the dishes were served a bit slowly. This table full of dishes, in modern times, is usually eaten during holidays. The faction field in the prince's mansion is indeed large. Apart from anything else, there is no need to worry about food and drink. Song Ciyu took the chopsticks handed by Zhu Zhu and wanted to reach out to pick up the vegetables. Cough. Zhu Zhu quickly stopped, and Song Ciyu suddenly remembered that there was another Buddha beside her. Okay, just let him pick it up first. With so many dishes, not to mention him alone, he won't be able to finish 2 more. According to the dining rules of the Wang mansion in memory, he can only pick up these dishes himself after using his chopsticks first. Prince, please have a meal, Song Ciyu couldn't help but remind him as he was still flipping through a booklet. Qin Heyuan then shifted his gaze back to her and said, "You don't have to wait for me." Okay. Song Ciyu agreed simply. What should he do if he breaks the rules? Eat early and finish early, and return to the house to rest. Perhaps it was because Song Ciyu ate too well, and Qin Heyuan quickly put away the booklet and asked the maid to serve him some dishes he loved to eat on a daily basis. "You have a great appetite today," Qin Heyuan couldn't help but say as he watched the food on the table disappear. "The dishes served today are all my favorite, just eat a little too much." "Don't worry, Prince, you should eat more too." Song Ciyu replied with a small cake in her mouth, smiling. "Madam, please eat less. There is still a late-night snack at night. Eating too much is not good for your health," Zhu Zhu whispered in Song Ciyu's ear. "Well, there's still a late-night snack. I won't say earlier. However, I was really hungry today. After eating this meal, it seemed like I had been hungry for several days. Strangely, my stomach didn't feel very bloated either." Song Ciyu obediently put down the dishes and waited for Qin Heyuan to say goodbye. After finishing a sip of soup, Qin Heyuan finally stood up. "You should go back and rest earlier. I have something important to do." "Prince, take your time." "Madam, are you okay after eating so much?" Zhu Zhu looked at me with concern, afraid that I would spit it out for her the next second. "It's okay, we won't have supper tonight. Let's go back." "Yes, madam." Returning to her own courtyard, Song Ciyu instantly freed herself from all constraints and lay on the bed with a single adult character. Just as she was about to fall asleep, Zhen Zhen knocked on the door and walked in. "Madam, the things are ready. Would you like to take a look before moving in?" What she actually wants to say more is that Madam's posture is really unsightly. If anyone else looks at it unexpectedly, Song Ciyu didn't care at all. She closed her eyes and said, "Everyone moved in. Isn't there still an empty room next door? Let the wet nurse live in, and in the future, I'll let her in as she pleases." "Is it possible for the wet nurse to casually enter the ladies' room?" Zhen Zhen had some doubts. "Just do as I say. Yenner is only 8 months old now. When he grows up a bit more, he will find a new place to live for the wet nurse." Before putting it on, she had just graduated from college, and after putting it on, her body was only 17. How could she take care of a baby by herself? But in order for Yenner to rely more on herself, this is already the best way. "Yes." Zhenjin took out the folding screen and covered up Song Ciyu's free and easy posture before going out and letting the servants move in the crib. When Song Ciyu woke up, she was awakened by Xiao Yenner's crying. Hiss, how did she fall asleep? Song Ciyu quickly bounced off the bed, pushed aside the folding screen, and walked to Yenner's bed. "Are you hungry?" Song Ciyu reached out and poked his little face, asking herself. Perhaps seeing someone coming, Yenner instantly stopped crying and stretched out her little fleshy hand to stretch towards Song Ciyu. Upon seeing this, Song Ciyu immediately picked him up with great enthusiasm. It should be said that other people's children are just adorable. "Jinjin, Zhu, where are people?" The little chubby man was hungry and had to quickly feed him something to eat. Zhen was not around, and Zhu heard the sound and quickly walked in. "Madam, Jinjin has gone to have a late-night snack, and tonight she is not on duty. Chen Ninyang has gone to cook for the young prince. Madam wants to keep him by her side, so this title has to change accordingly." Song Ciyu said, "Okay, hurry up and hurry up. Don't starve him." Zhu. "Madam, you really need it. Song Ciyu said, during these days of marrying into the royal mansion, are you and I still not sure if the prince's heart is not with me? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. No one is allowed to harm him by half. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. No one is allowed to harm him by half. The prince was just blinded by that lowly woman, and now she is no longer there. Madam will have her own child sooner or later. Zhu was stared at by Song Ciyu, and her voice became quieter and quieter. Madam, I just feel that you have finally managed to get through this time. Why? Has it changed again? Song Ciyu secretly sighed in her heart. For Zhenzhenju Pearl, her changes were indeed significant, but after all, she was not the original owner and her heart was not as ruthless. She just wants to live well since she has arrived, and the grudges and grievances are not that important to her. I saw his heart clearly, and naturally became clear-headed. Besides, my queen was at least from the Prime Minister's mansion. How could she be so narrow-minded? Song Ciyu reached out empty-handed and earnestly patted Zhu's shoulder. I don't have a son, he doesn't have a mother. How can this natural thing be avoided? Listen carefully, he will become my own son in the future. Without my permission, no one is allowed to chew his tongue and root. I just want to raise him well. Qin Liyan is the male protagonist of this book. If others don't know, it's okay. As someone who understands, she can't play chess recklessly. I understand madam, whatever madam says naturally means what she says. Although I don't know what the benefits are, I will definitely obey every decision made by madam and Zhenzhen. Zhu saw Song Ciyu's serious expression on her face, and only then did she realize that she was determined to raise the young crown prince. Song Ciyu nodded in satisfaction at Zhu. As the book said, Zhenzhen Zhu grew up with her from a young age. Although the original owner had done all sorts of bad things, she was quite good to her two close attendants. Therefore, Zhenzhen Zhu was loyal to her and very trustworthy. You will know in the future, Song Ciyu looked down at the small glutinous rice ball in her arms, maybe having a son would be quite interesting. Knocking, madam, it's me, Mrs. Chen. A steady and mature woman's voice sounded from outside the door. The wet nurse is here, Zhu reminded. Come in quickly, Chen Ninyang. Little Nai Pengzi has been waiting for a long time, Song Ciyu said as she gently put Yenner back into the cradle. As soon as she finished speaking, Chen Ninyang pushed the door in with a plate in her hand. Xianumi Tuanzi may have smelled the aroma of the rice and started babbling. Yenner obediently, isn't the meal here? After Chen Ninyang entered the door, she first placed the food on the table, and then walked over to pick up Yenner and let him sit firmly against a corner. Song Ciyu walked up to Chen Ninyang and reached out to help her hold Yenner, afraid that he might move and roll down. Seeing Chen Ninyang preparing to serve the small bowl again, Song Ciyu quickly gave a glance to Zhu, who immediately brought Yenner's food. Chen Ninyang, this is my first time teaching Yenner, and there are still many things I don't know. Please teach me carefully. Song Ciyu took the opportunity to speak as Chen Ninyang took the food from Zhu's hand. But Chen Ninyang didn't even lift her eyelids a bit, she just fed the spoon into Yenner's mouth bit by bit. Seeing this, Zhu was about to speak angrily, but was stopped in time by Song Ciyu's gaze. Chen Ninyang was originally someone around Yenner's mother, so naturally she had a lot of hostility towards her. Chen Ninyang is not at ease, and I am also reasonable. After all, I have never given birth to a child, so I still need Chen Ninyang's help. I said that my room Ninyang can enter and exit freely, which is definitely not a joke. Being able to freely enter and exit the master's room means that this person is highly trustworthy. I can entrust everything I have to Chen Ninyang, even if it's for the sake of studying. Chen Ninyang might as well give me some thin noodles. To fully win Qin Heyuan's trust, Chen Ninyang must be won over. Chen Ninyang took a paper handkerchief and wiped Yenner's chin, saying, Madam, you're too serious. The old lady doesn't dare to raise her up, she just hopes that the young prince can grow up safely and healthily. I know I treated your masters and servants harshly before, and I won't reverse your impression of me. But I am sincere about Yennefer, and I will never allow anyone to hurt him at all. The image of the original owner is really bad. Even if she says more now, it still feels like farting to the people around Yennefer's mother, but these words still need to be said in advance. If Madame really has this heart, the young crown prince can understand it. Although Chen Ninyang does not like Song Ciyu, the young crown prince must be sent to her side to be raised. She does not ask that what Song Ciyu said must be true, but having such words will make people feel more at ease. Song Ciyu only smiled when she heard this, and then pointed to the light green congee in the bowl. What is it? This is vegetable paste congee. The little prince is 8 months old now, so he can eat some vegetable paste congee without stopping to drink milk. When Chen Nanyang spoke again, her voice was much better, and it was enough for Song Ciyu. Song Ciyu. I know. Tomorrow, Mammy Chen will teach me how to make these mud congee. Chen Nanyang was a little surprised when she heard this. The princess from the Prime Minister's mansion, who doesn't touch the spring water with her 10 fingers, would actually say this. Is preparing to eat something like this. Before Chen Ninyang could finish speaking, Song Ciyu took it over and said, for babies, eating is the most important thing. There's no need to say more, I must learn it. If there is a mistake in the future, she can still say to Qin Lian without blushing or jumping. You are raising your mother little by little. The old lady knows. Chen Ninyang glanced at Song Ciyu and saw that the queen didn't seem to be joking, so she responded. After feeding Yennefer enough and putting him to sleep, Chen Ninyang left the room. Madam, just leave the small matter of cooking to the servant. Why do you need to do it yourself? Zhu asked in confusion, not understanding her master's intentions. Do you understand that I am cultivating a relationship with this kid? Even though he is still young and doesn't understand anything, he may suddenly become enlightened one day. In the future, I will still be attracted to the aura of a male lead, and I will rely on him to show filial piety to me. I almost accidentally told the truth. She likes this little child, but after all, it was not born by herself, and maternal love is not that heavy. Her only goal is to get along harmoniously with him in the future, at least not to kill herself with a single sword. Madame is so kind to him. First, she helps him establish his identity, and then she takes good care of him carefully. If he grows up and doesn't treat Madame well, Zhu won't spare him. Zhu held her breath and said, after all, he is the biological son of the concubine, and he used to be against them. It's still difficult for her to please Yennefer for a while. Upon hearing Zhu say this, Song Ciyu wanted to tell her. Don't do this. Previously, it was because you kept beating and scolding him. This kid found a chance to give you the name of a bad servant, and then kicked your hand and broke it. That's not a big deal, and then he sold you again. Unfortunately, you broke your arm, and no one else wanted you. In the end, he died tragically in the streets without even a corpse collector. It's really a sin. Updated every night from 18.00 to 20.00. New articles, thank you for your support. If you like them, please vote and add more updates. Oh, my heart, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. Is it really Madam? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Is it really Madam? Song Ciyu woke up very early, and before Yennefer could wake up crying and have dinner, she had already dressed herself up and left. Zhen. Pushing aside the bedroom of Zhen and Zhu, they were still sleeping soundly. She walked up to Zhen's bed and gently shook her awake. Madam. Zhen quickly rubbed her eyes and instantly regained consciousness. Shoo, keep it down. Pearl stayed with them all night last night, and it wasn't long before she returned to her room. Zhen immediately nodded and got up from the bed. After packing up, quickly go to my house to take care of Yenner, and I'll go find a wet nurse. Last night, it was agreed that she would learn how to make Yenner's food with Chen Ninyang, so she must take action early. Madam, I heard from Zhu Zhu last night that cooking food is very troublesome. Otherwise, I'll let the maid go. Zhen looked at Song Ciyu with some concern, feeling from her heart that her master still couldn't do these things. I'll go by myself, learn more and I'll do it. With this sentence, Song Ciyu quickly walked towards Chen Ninyang's bedroom. Unexpectedly, she woke up early, and Chen Ninyang was even earlier. It was feared that Chen Ninyang had already rushed to the kitchen at this moment. When Song Ciyu arrived at the kitchen, Chen Ninyang had just cleaned the vegetables. She was surprised to see Song Ciyu appear here, and her calm eyes flickered with surprise. She never expected that Song Ciyu would wake up so early. I'm late. Song Ciyu walked quickly to Chen Ninyang's side, but secretly thought to herself that Chen Ninyang was also too diligent. There was still an hour before feeding. Madam, you don't need to come so early. The young prince will also use a complimentary food every day during the Shenshur hour, and Madam can come and make it at that time. Chen Ninyang paused for a moment before saying. I didn't pay much attention to him because I was not feeling well a few days ago. Now I'm very well. Besides, I don't have much time to make complimentary food for him myself. I'll try my best to make up for what I did before with dim sum. Making complimentary foods is already a simple matter for her, and when Yenner turns 1 year old, she doesn't need to make complimentary foods anymore. Calculate the time, which is only 2 to 3 months. Yenner's food is important, and after all, Song Ciyu is a legitimate consort. She dare not really offend her, so she stopped talking and started teaching Song Ciyu how to make complimentary foods hand in hand. After tossing around in the kitchen for over half an hour, Song Ciyu looked at several bowls of different complimentary foods with satisfaction and said, "What do wet nurses think? Madam did a great job." This sentence was praised from her heart. Although she was a bit flustered during the process of making complimentary foods, it can be seen that she did use her heart. Song Ciyu stretched her waist. Her body was too delicate, and after only doing some work for a while, she felt that her back was not even straight. Madam, I'll warm up the complimentary food here first. When it's time, I'll send it over. Madam, please go back and rest. Breakfast will also be delivered later. Chen Ninyang looked at Song Ciyu's tired expression and said. Song Ciyu nodded and said, "Okay, thank you for your hard work." She was not prepared to refuse too much, and readily agreed that she had woken up too early and was still a bit struggling. As soon as Song Ciyu left, the kitchen immediately exploded. With her around, none of the little chefs dared to speak much. Now that she had left, these people gathered around Chen Ninyang. Is it really Madam who just arrived? Chen Ninyang, why did Madam personally come to make the little prince's complimentary food? It's so strange, can't it be that something happened? Chen Ninyang, what happened? You should tell us. Chen Ninyang pushed away the crowd and said, "What do you see is the fact. What should I say? Madam is making complimentary food for the young prince herself. However, Madam is not always with Sue." As soon as these words were spoken, the scene disappeared for a moment, and no one spoke the latter half of the sentence. Finally, Chen Ninyang spoke up. "I don't know if you ask me. Anyway, don't just talk nonsense. Everyone knows Madam's temperament, so be careful not to get beaten." Chen Ninyang frowned. She still needs to observe Madam carefully for a while, and now no one knows what she is really paying attention to. What kind of attention can be paid? Song Ciyu just wants to protect herself from losing her life. But for others, this is already unknown. Whether it's misinterpretation or misunderstanding, as Chen Ninyang said, the young prince can understand her intentions. When she returned to the bedroom, Jinjin was sitting in front of Yenner's bed without moving a step. She quickly welcomed her in with ease. "Madam, you have returned. The young prince has not yet woken up. If it's okay, let him fall asleep first. The complimentary food is already warm. Song Ciyu ran straight to her big bed and asked her to sleep for a little longer. Jinjin saw that she couldn't muster too much energy and asked in a low voice, "Madam, I'll go and bring you some breakfast." "When is it now?" Song Ciyu rubbed her eyes and looked at Jinjin. Jinjin said, "It's almost time for the hour to come. The prince still has 1 hour to return to his mansion. There is still 1 hour left, so she can sleep for a few more incense sticks. Bring me breakfast later, I'll lie down for a while," said Song Ciyu, turning her back and not hearing anything outside the window. Upon seeing this, Jinjin quickly covered the blanket carefully for her. After taking a nap, the whole person regained their energy. After finishing breakfast, Mrs. Chen also brought the complimentary food. Yenner sleeps well, not crying or making noise, and seems to have adapted to the new environment and people. "Chen Ninyang, I'll try to feed him." Seeing Chen Ninyang nod, Song Ciyu finally took over. "Mm." Yenner reached out her chubby little hand and shouted at Song Ciyu, "Mm." Song Ciyu raised her eyebrows. How could this child suddenly be so active? "The young prince is feeling happy," Chen Ninyang explained. "I see, it seems that her decision was not wrong." After feeding Yenner complimentary food, she played with him for a while before Jinjin came in and told her that the fourth prince had returned to his mansion. "Chen Ninyang's research will be handed over to you first. Madam, take your time." Chen Ninyang looked at Song Ciyu's back with a somewhat complicated expression. She knew what Song Ciyu was doing to find the fourth prince at this moment. Song Ciyu now dares to openly befriend Chen Ninyang because when the original owner killed Su Shi, it was not discovered by anyone else, otherwise this situation would not have happened now. Speaking of which, when Su Shi was alive, she did have many obstacles, but after giving birth to Yenner, the original owner did not expect to kill Su Shi so early. The tonics she sent could at least keep her going for a few more months. However, even so, Su Shi will eventually die in her hands. Song Ciyu. The prince is ready to eat. Jinjin. Before the prince returned from the court, he had breakfast with the eldest son of the general's mansion at a tavern. Just eat it, so as not to have to eat with him again. It's better to do the right thing directly, and she also needs to seize the time to cultivate feelings with her cheap son. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Preparation for Departure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Preparation for Departure. The fourth prince was waiting for her in the study when he saw her come in and put down his pen. In her impression, the personality of the fourth prince was the best among many marquises. He is neither arrogant nor arrogant, and he is also beautiful. Although the fourth prince did not have a crush on her, if she had remained obedient, she would not have ended up in that ending. "I've seen the prince." Song Ciyu leaned down slightly, not letting go of any of the proper etiquette in order not to be doubted of her identity. Little did they know that her current appearance was the most strange, but for the fourth prince, he also needed this kind of queen, so he wouldn't say anything more because of Song Ciyu's change. "Follow me." The fourth prince stood up and took his pen and ink into his hand, then walked out of the study first. He led Song Ciyu towards the ancestral hall of the mansion. The ancestral hall is shrouded in smoke, but it is very quiet. Except for 2 cleaning attendants, no one is allowed to approach here on weekdays. After Song Ciyu joined Qin Huyuan in offering incense, Qin Huyuan finally retrieved the genealogy. "The ink has been polished, come and pick up the pen." Qin Huyuan, after preparing everything, turned to look at Song Ciyu and said. Song Ciyu nodded, took a brush, and added Yenner's name under her own name, moving smoothly without any delay. The genealogy homepage does not include the names of Su's mother and son. When Song Ciyu married the fourth prince, her father, the prime minister, said that there could only be one queen in the fourth prince's mansion. Therefore, even if Su was favored, she could only be a concubine and could not be promoted to a concubine. Qin Hiyuan looked at the name written by Song Ciyu and couldn't help but twitch from the corner of his eye. "You," he said, "what's wrong, Prince?" Song Ciyu put down her brush and looked up at Qin Hiyuan. "Forget it, it's nothing. Yenner will stay by your side in the future, treat him well." The noblewoman of the Prime Minister's mansion wrote so crookedly. "Prince, rest assured that even if you have wronged him in the future, you will not be wronged by yourself," Song Ciyu said with a smile. "His son has already been taken, and his future glory, wealth, and status will not be easily grasped. With the halo of the male protagonist by her side, she can strive less in the future, just wait for her to enjoy happiness." Qin Hiyuan saw that she had no other abnormalities, so he turned around and collected the genealogy properly. "Tomorrow is the Flower Appreciation Festival, and the palace is preparing a flower banquet. If you have nothing to do today, you can go out of the mansion and choose some suitable clothes. Shopping. Okay. Wait, we need to go to the palace to enjoy the flower feast. I also want to go to the palace. Can I not go?" Song Ciyu thought of the group of noble men and women, feeling a bit confused. It was tiring to get along with others in a hypocritical way. "No, you're actually the queen of this royal family. You can't miss such occasions. Didn't you love attending these banquets before?" Qin Hiyuan frowned and looked at Song Ciyu. "I'm just worried that if I stay in the palace for too long, I won't be able to attend to Yenner." Song Ciyu pretended to be conflicted and looked very like a loving mother. "No problem, Yenner is accompanied by a wet nurse. Tomorrow at midnight, I will be waiting for you at the East Gate." It is obvious that Qin Hiyuan did not realize the true intention of Song Ciyu's words. Knowing that talking too much would be of no use, Song Ciyu had no choice but to agree that at least she would be able to go out of the mansion and choose some nice clothes later. Outside the ancestral hall, Junjun was waiting there. "I have seen the prince and his wife." Qin Hiyuan took a token from his waist and handed it to Song Ciyu, saying, "Go back to your mansion before you sure." Seeing Song Ciyu nod, Qin Hiyuan left without looking back. "Wow, madam, it's a token for leaving the mansion. Are we going out?" There are rules in the royal mansion, and people are not allowed to enter or leave the mansion without the order of the prince. Generally, if there is anything missing, just report it to the butler. There is a dedicated person responsible for keeping everything ready or summoning some shopkeepers into the royal mansion, so there are not many opportunities to leave the mansion. There are many interesting things outside the mansion, so it's more interesting to go out and choose what you want instead of sending it to the mansion. Song Ciyu was playing with the token. She had been here for a few days and had not yet left the mansion. Let's go and spend some silver to prepare for leaving the mansion. By the way, you can ask Zhu if she wants to continue resting or come out with us. She definitely wants to be with madam, there's still time to sleep after sleeping. Zhenzhen followed behind Song Ciyu and said with a smile. "Okay, go call her along. I'll take another look at Yenner, don't forget the sedan chair." Song Ciyu reached out and patted Zhenzhen's shoulder, gesturing for her to quickly go and call Zhu. "Madam, don't worry, Zhenzhen guarantees to leave the mansion within a stick of incense." Both Zhenzhen and Zhu are only 14 or 15 years old, which is more in line with their current age. It seems that Qin Hiyuan has done something very right. Let's talk about it now. As for tomorrow's banquet, just go ahead. Some acquaintances will definitely have a face-to-face meeting. Inside, Chen Ninyang was holding Yen Er and playing with some wooden toys. When she saw Song Ciyu enter the room, Xiao Yen Er extended her fingers and pointed at Song Ciyu with a babbling sound. Not to mention, there's a small glutinous rice ball around, and the whole room looks a bit lively. "Let me hug you, isn't it?" Song Ciyu held Yenner in her arms and asked with a smile. "Mm. Yen Er also responded to her with great effort. Upon seeing this, Chen Ninyang was about to leave the room, but was stopped by Song Ciyu in a timely manner. "Wait for Chen Ninyang, I will be leaving the mansion soon and will only return at Usher. I plan to make some clothes for Yennefer, please write down the size of his clothes for me. Madam, the mansion is equipped with the clothes of the young prince from all seasons, which should not be worn out throughout the year. Although she knew that Song Ciyu was kind-hearted, she still told the truth. It's okay, the clothes I want to make for him are different. Just write down the size of the clothes for me. The clothes of ancient people were really troublesome, it's better to make a few simple and good-looking ones. Seeing what she said, Chen Ninyang could only follow suit. She walked up to the table and turned to look at Song Ciyu. Madam, can I borrow a pen and paper? Use whatever you want. Song Ciyu gently pinched Yennefer's round cheeks, causing him to giggle. No wonder he has attracted so many princesses from outside the region since he grew up. Although he is still young, he can now see the delicacy of his facial features, let alone his father's excellent appearance. There is also genetic blessing, and indeed the one with a beautiful face is definitely the protagonist. Chen Ninyang folded the written note and walked over. Only then did Song Ciyu send Yennefer back to her arms and put the note away. After putting away the note, Song Ciyu suddenly thought of something else. She quickly walked up to her collapsed position, lifted a corner of the blanket, and skillfully reached out to grab it. She stuffed a handful of silver bills into her sleeve, then walked out of the wind screen and said, after finishing the task, I will come back earlier. Chen Ninyang said, Madam, it's rare to leave the mansion and there's no need to rush back. I can rest assured that the young prince has a woman. Okay, Song Ciyu nodded with a smile. Chen Ninyang looked at Song Ciyu's departure and listened to the playful voice of the young prince in her arms. She couldn't help but sigh, if Aunt Su were still alive and Madam could do this, life would probably be very easy. Unfortunately, Aunt Su has already passed away. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Repetitive Thieves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Repetitive Thieves. Song Ciyu walked into the courtyard, and Zhu Zhu immediately approached. Her joyful expression had already overflowed. Madam, Jinjin said you can take us out of the mansion. Is the sedan chair ready? Where's the silver? Although she has some silver bills on her body, she can only use the ones in the mansion. The sedan chair is ready and has already stopped in front of the door. There are also silver treasures to be picked up from the silver room. They should be waiting in front of the mansion now, Zhu Zhu said quickly, supporting Song Ciyu. Let's go, this time leaving the palace. Song Ciyu originally wanted to be more low-key, but unfortunately, the carriage prepared by the royal family for her was really too eye-catching. Looking at the luxurious carriage, Song Ciyu felt very embarrassed. Now, wherever the carriage passed by, it was clear that the people from the royal family had arrived. Take off all the bells on top, we're out on the street, not playing. Song Ciyu looked at the decorations on the carriage with some disdain, sometimes too complicated, but even more tacky. Madam, isn't this the carriage you specially ordered by someone else? Only those who go out like this will know your identity. After taking it, not many people will know that you are Madam anymore. Zhu Zhu looked at Song Ciyu with confusion. For her, she didn't care whether to leave the mansion low-key or not. Cough, I've changed my mind now. The carriage's ear hurts when the wind blows, disturbing my tranquility. Absurdly, did she customize this broken car herself? Pearl, you can do whatever Madam says. Haven't you heard me? Madam said to remove all these bell decorations. Seeing this, Jinjin quickly instructed the servants to remove the decorations from the carriage. The decoration on the carriage immediately became much more pleasing to the eye. Madam, I'll help you onto the sedan chair. Seeing that Song Ciyu was satisfied, Jinjin quickly helped her onto the car with great vision. Madam, where are we going now? Zhu Zhu asked eagerly as she sat in front of the carriage. What is the best workshop for making clothes in the imperial city? Her memory is not entirely complete, and there are always some details that she cannot remember. After all, she's not the strongest brain either, so being able to remember big things is enough. Jinjin. Madam, it's Jinsi Fong. Song Ciyu said, let's take a look first. If you're out, just call me Mississippi. It's best not to reveal your identity today. Zhenzhen and Zhu Zhu exchanged a glance and answered together, Mississippi. Jinsi Fong is well known and is the favorite home of the noblewomen in the imperial city. Even the concubines in the palace customized the clothes of Jinsi Fong. Today she is going to see if this Jinsi Fong is as good as she said. Song Ciyu sat in the carriage, closing her eyes and recuperating. Unexpectedly, before she could close her eyes for a few seconds, there was a loud noise outside. Then, the carriage shook and she almost slipped off the chair. Miss, are you okay? Jinjin and Zhu finally managed to control their bodies and immediately lifted the curtain to check her condition. Song Ciyu shook her head, grabbed Zhu's arm, and crawled out of it. I'm fine, what's going on here? Before the words could be finished, many tall and sturdy people came to the carriage, each holding wooden sticks, trying to squeeze past the carriage in chase after someone. Miss, it was a young boy who rushed over just now and alarmed the horse. The coachman wiped the sweat from his forehead. Although it was an external cause, it was ultimately because he did not control the horse's emotions in time and alarmed the queen. Bold. My young lady's carriage dares to collide, it's not fatal. Zhu skillfully jumped off the carriage, not afraid of these people coming up to beat her, pointing at them and shouting arrogantly. We are chasing a thief and disturbing the nobleman. It is the fault of the little ones, please forgive me. Although all the decorations on the carriage have been removed, the carriage's value can still be seen. The leading man did not know Song Ciyu's identity, but he dared not easily offend him even with his luxurious carriage. Zhu turned her head to look at Song Ciyu and knew that her master didn't want to receive too much attention here. She had no choice but to speak angrily, my young lady doesn't want to argue with you. Why don't you leave quickly? The alley they were walking in was quite narrow, and if they squeezed through, they would definitely collide with the carriage. However, the detour was too far. Just as the leading man was struggling, the little brother behind them pointed to one side of the carriage and shouted loudly. Big brother, that kid is hiding behind the carriage. Song Ciyu turned around to look at the back of the car, following his cries. A ragged and half-grown boy was pulling her carriage, trying to hide behind it without being noticed, but some of the broken fabric drifted out with the wind. He heard that he had been discovered by their people and quickly put away the exposed clothes. Hey, you stinky kid, why don't you leave quickly? How dare you touch our young lady's car? It's so dirty. The leading man had not yet had a chance to speak, but Zhu shouted angrily first. Jinjin saw that Zhu was still speaking so freely, so she quickly grabbed her sleeve and said, people can rush, but don't say that. When Zhu snorted and was about to say something more, Song Ciyu quickly raised her hand to block her next words, who are you? We are from Ian Restaurant. Miss, could you please help us catch this kid back? The Ian Restaurant is located near Jinsi Fong, and many high-ranking officials and people have fallen in love with it. Qin Heyuan used to dine there before. He stole your things. Song Ciyu was helped down from the carriage by Jinjin. This kid stole 51 from our restaurant again and happened to be caught by our shopkeeper. He can't resist this time. Stinky kid, hurry up and hand over the money. Otherwise, I'll break your hand sooner or later. They pointed wooden sticks at the person hiding behind the carriage, wishing to drag him out and beat him to death now. Also, it seems that he is still a habitual offender. Jinjin, give them money. Song Ciyu raised her hand and gestured for the other party to calm down first, then glanced at Jinjin and said. Give them money. Miss, are you going to give it on his behalf? Zhu was indeed the first to jump out upon hearing this. She walked quickly to Song Ciyu's side and then quickly pointed her finger at a boy hiding behind the car. If she didn't find him dirty, she would have caught him long ago, but even so, there is still a coachman who can catch him. Why did the young lady help him repay the money? Well, give them a penny of silver, Song Ciyu continued without changing her expression, while Jinjin immediately took out a penny of silver from her purse as requested. The Wang mansion is wealthy and generous, so a mere penny of silver is not a big deal. However, it is not a reason to give it to others for nothing. But seeing her own master's indifferent appearance, Zhu Zhu could only give up, only staring at the back of her carriage with some frustration in the end. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. I take this person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. I take this person. The man in charge received a penny of silver handed by Jinjin, and it was good that they could retrieve the money. However, as he looked at Song Ciyu, he felt a bit uneasy in his heart. Miss, what do you mean by this? This silver is like a hot potato, wanting to receive it but afraid that the other party is planning something. You take the money and leave, as for this person, I'll take it. Song Ciyu tugged at the corner of her mouth, a faint smile hanging on her lips. She looked calm and composed, making it difficult for others to see what she was thinking now. This kid is the thief in this area. Miss, are you sure you want to take such a person? The man in charge didn't believe him anymore, and everyone present looked at her with puzzled eyes. Song Ciyu raised her head slightly and said, of course, I also have conditions. Miss, please tell me. He knew it wasn't that simple. Although a penny of silver was nothing to her, he didn't know why just looking at her appearance made him think it wasn't that simple. If you see him steal something from you again, you'll beat him to death. However, Song Ciyu went against the norm and said a sentence that made everyone even more stunned. This also made the leading man couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was really that he had thought too much, it was so simple, but this lady is really unpredictable. Jinjin. Hurry up, my young lady still has something to do. I can't waste any more time with you. The money was given and people helped. What are they still doing here? As soon as the others dispersed, Jinjin and Zhu Zhu gathered together, waiting to see how she would handle the thief. Song Ciyu turned to look at the corner of the carriage and said, Miss, I am also half of your benefactor. Even if we leave, we won't be able to come out. As soon as he finished speaking, a boy dressed in a messy outfit, with an explosive hairstyle and a dirty face poked his head out from behind the carriage. His dark eyes swept left and right, and when he saw that his pursuers had really left, he crawled out from behind the carriage. Hey, young master, I thought you were a good person. I didn't expect you to have such a malicious heart and even instigate them to kill me next time. The child looked only 5 or 6 years old, but his tone of voice and gaze were far older than his actual age. Dead child, your life was saved by my young lady. If you're not grateful, that's all. How dare you be so rude in front of my young lady? Zhu Zhu put her hands on her hips, gasping for breath, and began to output to the child. Stealing is shameless behavior, what's wrong with being beaten? Song Ciyu lowered her eyes and asked him word by word. Sometimes people need to have a bit of a holy heart, but never a Virgin Mary. That's right, if you ask me to say that my master shouldn't care about you. If you were killed by them, you would have stolen someone else's things first. Zhu Zhu quickly agreed when she saw that Song Ciyu had the same idea as her. I didn't ask you to save me again. If you don't help me, I can still escape on my own. I haven't been fooling around these years, young master. Humph. The child tilted his head and nostrils to look forward, looking very unsure. Seeing his appearance, Song Ciyu shook her head helplessly. She was not very old, but also someone who couldn't hide her face. What's your name? Song Ciyu looked at him and spoke again, too lazy to talk to him anymore. Why should I tell you? I won't say it. Sigh, this little child has some kind of bone turning on his body. I spent a penny but couldn't buy your name, so since that's the case, Swafong will snatch back the 50 on his body. Song Ciyu put her hands around her chest and smiled brightly at the child. Do you really think she wants to give something for free? Or do you really think she's a kind-hearted little girl who doesn't leave the front door or walk away from the second door? Are you joking? The money she spends must be worth it. Swafun, also known as their coachman, immediately walked towards the child upon receiving instructions. The child saw that she didn't seem to be joking with him, so he quickly spoke up and said, "Ah Chin. Ah Chin. Sure enough, it's him. I've told you my name, young master. I can go now." Ah Chin looked at Swafun, who was blocking him, and stretched his neck to ask Song Ciyu. "You have a sick younger brother, don't you?" Song Ciyu pressed down on her deep joy, knowing who she had caught. Upon hearing her words, Ah Chin instantly widened his eyes and then stared at Song Ciyu with an incredulous expression. He could be very certain that he had met this woman for the first time, but how could she know about her own situation? Who the hell is this woman? Zhu whispered in Jinjin's ear, "Miss, shouldn't you know him?" "It's impossible. You and I stay by Miss's side every day. When have we seen such a person?" Jinjin shook her head and said, "Don't ask me, I don't know either." "How did you know?" The child took a step back and then looked at her with caution, afraid that Song Ciyu would be detrimental to him. "Want to know? Wait for me at the entrance of the fourth prince's mansion tomorrow afternoon." Song Ciyu looked at his bewildered expression and felt that things were unpredictable. She didn't expect him to suffer these hardships at this age. She is from the fourth prince's mansion, she is really a powerful and influential person. Akin lowered his head and bit his lower lip, two voices constantly arguing in his mind. In the end, just as he decided to reject Song Ciyu's proposal, Song Ciyu spoke again and firmly grasped his 7 inches. "If you arrive at the place I mentioned on time and wait, I will consider curing your brother's illness as well. How about that?" This sentence is a great opportunity for Ah Chin, and he can't bear to hesitate for a moment. "I promise you. But why do you still need to help me?" "I'll tell you again then, precious pearl, get on the car, we can go now." However, Song Ciyu didn't express her inner thoughts directly to him, but sold him a trick. Some words are more useful to say at the appropriate time. After a few people got back on the carriage, it continued to drive towards the position of Jinsifang. "Jinjin, I'll be waiting for him outside the mansion at noon tomorrow. When I see him appear, I'll take him to our hospital." Song Ciyu stretched her waist, suddenly gaining more confidence in her future life. "Miss, do you really want someone like him to enter the palace?" Zhu lifted a corner of the curtain and asked with a furrowed brow. "Yes, not only do I want him to enter the royal palace, but I will also provide him with delicious food and drinks." Song Ciyu nodded lightly, and Ah Chin looked at him with no taste or virtue. He always spoke tough words, but in fact, he was not. He was a person who was always remembered by others' kindness. There is a saying that goes, knowing the face but not the heart. Ah Chin is a person who can hide his heart very well. Zhu pouted and placed it on the curtain. She really felt that Madame had changed a lot. Before, they used to walk horizontally in the royal mansion. Although they have not suffered any injustice now, this feeling is just different. There is also Chen Ninyang, relying on his wife's tolerance for her, walking around her bed freely without any request for permission, and her overall status seem to be higher than those of her and Jinjin. Thank you for your votes, dear children. If you like, you can vote more. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Old Bank. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Old Bank. Jinsifang occupies the best location in the imperial city, and almost all streets near it are often overcrowded. The fourth prince enjoys tranquility, so his mansion is located in a slightly remote area to the east. Along the way, the voices grew louder and louder. How far is it? Song Ciyu lifted the curtain on one side and curiously looked out. This place is much hotter than she imagined. Miss, just turn around this street and you'll be there, Zhenzhen replied, turning her head. Song Ciyu said, let's stop here and walk over. Zhenzhen said, but here there is a mix of good and bad, will it? Zhu. It's a precious treasure that I don't know. Sometimes the more people there are, the safer it is. Moreover, there are many shops here. Miss, you can also buy some other favorite items. Zhu has been completely captivated by the scenery here, she hasn't been here for several years. Whether it was the former Prime Minister's mansion or the current King's mansion, they are not particularly far from here, but their identities are rare to be able to leave the mansion, let alone have the opportunity to take a stroll. Stop it. Song Ciyu agreed with Zhu's words and raised her hand to signal the carriage to stop. With a cry, the carriage stopped in a sparsely populated area, and then the master and servant three got off the carriage, one in front and one behind. Suofeng, please find a shadow nearby and wait for us. Suofeng. Yes, miss. The climate in August is full of summer heat. Zhenzhen and Zhu stood by her side, one holding an umbrella and the other holding a fan. She actually said that just give her a fan, but the two of them insisted on doing so, fearing that they would heat her up. It would be great if there could be an electric fan, but unfortunately this is not a place where money can buy high-tech. Bitch. Dirty Mrs. Skirt, drag the door out and teach me a lesson. Just as Song Ciyu passed by an old jewelry store, a piercing and sharp female voice came from inside the door. Song Ciyu raised her eyebrows, suddenly stopped and turned her head to explore the store. Miss, you don't want to help him again, do you? Zhu saw her master pause and immediately asked in a low voice. The master's behavior these past few days has been too strange, so it's not her fault for thinking too much. No, Song Ciyu shook her head decisively. She was just curious about who woman dared to be so rude on the street. After all, for people of this era, women should understand gentleness and virtue, and most girls would not give up on the street, let alone teach their servants on the street. As soon as Song Ciyu blurted out the word no, the woman's guard dragged the waiter from the shop and rushed out. Their actions were rude, almost hitting the pearl standing in the middle. Miss, the person inside seems to be the daughter of the Ministry of War's attendant, Zhenzhen confirmed with her eyes narrowed and whispered in Song Ciyu's ear. The daughter of the Minister of War's attendant. Zhenzhen knows everyone, but she doesn't have any impression of this person in her mind. Song Ciyu. How did you know? 3 years ago, when the young lady took us to offer incense at Chaoqing Temple, we happened to meet her that day. At that time, the young lady snatched the headshot, and she even came to cause trouble. However, our Prime Minister's mansion cannot afford to offend her. Later, you sent someone to drive her out of Chaoqing Temple. Zhenzhen thought for a moment before saying. Upon hearing Zhenzhen's explanation, Song Ciyu recalled it for a while before vaguely remembering the incident. It seemed that the original owner had not even taken her to heart. A maid's daughter dares to compete with our young lady for a headshot, but driving her out would be a cheap deal for her, Zhu quickly interjected. She couldn't really like this person from the bottom of her heart. Let's go. Song Ciyu looked at the arrogant appearance of the person inside, just shook her head, and then left here with Zhenzhen and Zhu. When Song Ciyu said to leave, Zhenzhen and Zhu naturally followed without stopping. This kind of thing is not uncommon both inside and outside the mansion. They expressed sympathy, but not everyone can take care of it. Moreover, it is someone who once had a one-sided relationship with Song Ciyu. As soon as I entered Jinsi Fang, a shop assistant immediately walked up. He led Song Ciyu and the other three towards the cabinet, constantly introducing the latest models in the store. I have taken all the styles you just introduced, here are the sizes you can take. Song Ciyu reached out to touch the fabric, and it was really first class. Miss, do you want all 3 of these? The shop assistant heard her very generous words, and her eyes lit up. These 3 items are getting more expensive each, although they are not priceless, they still cost 100 taels. Yes, Song Ciyu nodded with great certainty. The Grand Prince Yuan's mansion was not so unaffordable that she couldn't afford to buy 3 pieces of clothing, let alone these long dresses. Zhu. Hurry up and wrap it up for our young lady according to the size. Upon hearing Zhu's words, the shop assistant quickly handed the note to another person and instructed him to package the new clothes according to their size. Can you modify or customize clothes according to customer requirements here? Song Ciyu strolled from the first floor to the second floor, and then from the second floor to the third floor, but couldn't see the tailor's area. So she led the shop assistant to a corner and asked. It's possible, but the clothes in Jinsi Fong are the most novel and gorgeous both inside and outside the imperial city. Didn't Miss find your favorite style? The shopkeeper pondered for a moment before saying, he has been on duty for so many years and has never encountered such a situation before. Whoever comes to Jinsi Fong will not be dazzled by the clothes here, and there will be no one who makes demands. You have a wide variety of clothing styles here, and the colors and fabrics are all top-notch. However, you really don't have the style I really want here. These clothes may look good, but they are too troublesome to wear. Speaking of which, she was already a fashion designer. Although she didn't have to worry about food and drink when she came here, she couldn't forget her old profession. We don't have the style that Miss wants in our store, and this is the first time I've heard of it. I don't know what style Miss wants. Song Ciyu was talking to the waiter when a door behind him suddenly pushed open. A man in white held a mysterious fan and looked at them with a graceful and spring breeze. The 3 of them turned their heads together and looked at the man who had just spoken. The shop assistant respectfully bowed to him and said, Shen is the head of the family. Zhen. Master Shen. Miss, he should be Shen Shaoan, one of the 3 major masters of Jinsi Fong. Song Ciyu looked at Zhen in admiration. Wow, there's a little detective next to her who knows everything, and her memory is also impressive. Do you have any paper or pens? Song Ciyu glanced around at the surroundings, but didn't notice anything. Finally, she looked back at Shen Shaoan and asked with a smile. Yes, please come in. Shen Shaoan closed the fan in his hand, then pushed the door wider with his fan, and then made a gesture of inviting them into the room. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. I designed it myself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. I designed it myself, go and receive others. After the 3 of them entered the room, Shen Shaoan waved a fan at the waiter again and closed the door on his own. Shop assistant. Yes. Song Ciyu looked at the furnishings inside the room, where there was a strong smell of paper and pen. It seems that this is an ancient version of the office. Please sit at the table. Shen Shaoan collected the ink-stained rice paper on the table one by one, and then put on a few new pages of paper. Song Ciyu was not polite to him either, sitting opposite him, while Zhen and Zhu stood quietly behind her, waiting for her instructions. There are thousands or even hundreds of styles of clothing in Jinsi Fong, whether it's clothing from our Zhou dynasty or from the grasslands or the northern cold. I don't know what kind of clothing Miss needs in her heart, Shen Shaoan said proudly as he looked at Song Ciyu. It's hard to say, I'll draw it for you to see. The clothes she wants don't really need to be too fancy, but the style will definitely be unique here. Shen Tsongan. Please. Why is Miss still interested in making clothes? Zhu looked at Song Ciyu's serious persistence in writing and couldn't help but secretly ask Zhen. Miss's thoughts are not something we can speculate on, just watch and speak less. Zhen booed at Zhu. Although Miss has been drawing since elementary school, who knew she would be interested in customizing clothes? What Zhen and Zhu are even less aware of is that in the future, their masters will have to rely on this old profession to earn a lot of money. Song Ciyu's posture with the pen was a bit awkward, but every stroke that fell on the paper was incredibly smooth. This is the style I want. Song Ciyu put down her paintbrush and handed the paper she had drawn to Shen Tsongan. Shen Tsongen put down the fan, reached out to lift the painting, and carefully examined it in front of him. Simple but not complicated, but this is not a costume from the Zhou dynasty, grasslands, or the northern cold region. Although I have seen it countless times, it is also the first time I have seen it. Excuse me, miss, where is this costume from? Shen Tsongen looked at the painting on the paper and remained silent for a while before slowly speaking up. I designed it myself, Song Ciyu said with a pursed smile. Although the appearance of the clothes was what she had in mind, it still had a big name. Designed by himself. Shen Tsongen widened his eyes slightly, thinking of this kind of clothing is truly a rare person. Well, it's called casual wear. Although it doesn't have a gorgeous shell, people can get the ultimate comfort when wearing it. As long as you try it out, I guarantee you will experience its practicality. Casual wear, her favorite. Although she is a fashion designer, she still prefers casual wear over some very beautiful clothes. However, in this era, there was no zipper for this object, so she designed the chain as a cloth button. Song Ciyu said, I wonder if your Jin Si Fong can help me customize it. Casual clothing, this name is also very suitable for this clothing. Our Jinsi workshop is the most famous clothing building both inside and outside the Imperial City, and we can definitely customize this casual clothing for Mississippi. Shen Tsongen nodded as he looked at the painting. Although this casual wear was his first time seeing it, he inexplicably felt that after making it, it would definitely match its name and make people feel very comfortable wearing it. Shen Tsongen said, I can customize a set for the young lady free of charge, but I have one condition. Upon hearing Shen Tsongen's condition, Zhen Zhen and Zhu Zhu immediately exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of surprise in each other's eyes. The clothes sold by Jinsi Fong are extremely expensive, and now they are willing to customize a set of clothes for the young lady for free. This is probably the first time, even for people in the palace, Jinsi Fong has never customized a set of clothes for anyone for free. And the clothes designed by the lady do look a bit strange. Upon hearing these words, Song Ciyu couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and said, Master Shen, please speak up. I wonder if it's possible to customize an extra set for myself. Shen Tsongen looked at Song Ciyu with some embarrassment. This was not the first time he had made such a request. Song Ciyu did not expect Shen Tsongen to be interested in casual clothes. After all, casual clothes are considered a relatively common type of modern clothing among the general public. Of course, it will only be completed in a few days. Song Ciyu readily agreed. In fact, she came this time just to test the reality of the Jin Si Fong, and she didn't expect to meet Shen Tsongen. It's good to have a good relationship with him, but her goal is not that. Shen Tsongen. 3 days. Song Ciyu nodded, then took 2 clean white papers and quickly drew a set of clothes for summer and winter on them. These 2 sets are also troublesome for Jinsifang. For winter, just make them bigger according to the size. Song Ciyu took out Yenner's size and placed it on the table. Customizing clothes for him is also something that cannot be forgotten. A child's. Shen Tsongen looked at her 2 new drawings and was somewhat surprised. While summer clothes are not too special, winter ones are different. Why is the collar so much higher? Isn't it strange to wear them? Well, I'll come and collect it myself in a few days. Song Ciyu looked up at Jinjin and then took 5 pieces of gold from her hand. This is a deposit of 500 taels, and I'll make up for the rest when I get there. Jin Si Fong can deliver Mrs. clothes directly to the mansion, Shen Tsongen said. It was obvious that he wanted to know her background, but he didn't expect her to come and pick them up when she mentioned it. Don't bother, anyway, I'll come out again in a few days, maybe I can choose a few more sets from you. Song Ciyu smiled faintly, as leaving the mansion would be troublesome for her, but she didn't want to reveal her background yet. Upon hearing her say this, Shen Tsongen had no choice but to give up. Anyway, he could see her again next time, wouldn't he? Seeing her getting up and preparing to leave, Shen Songan quickly picked up the blueprint of Yenner's winter clothes and asked Song Ciyu, "Is it just that this piece really needs to be made into such a high collar? Adding a high furry collar to winter clothes can save the trouble of wearing a handkerchief, and it is more suitable for the skin and warm. Mainly, she thinks that such clothes not only look good but also keep warm. So it's like this design is very clever, it should also be Mrs. own design." Shen Songan looked at Song Ciyu with a smile, and in his eyes, Song Ciyu was already very different from the people around him. "When I have nothing to do, I like to tinker with these things. It's getting late, young Master Shen. Goodbye." Besides coming to Jinsi Fang, she has other things to do and can't talk to Shen Songan anymore. Shen Songan stood up and escorted her to the door. As soon as Song Ciyu came downstairs, the shop assistant greeted her and said, "Miss, can I put your clothes on the carriage?" Song Ciyu glanced at Juju and immediately took the packaged clothes from the second-hand store. "Give them to me," she said. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Want to do business? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Want to do business? Juju, first put your clothes back in the carriage, and then wait for us with Swifeng in the same place. Junjun and I will go buy something. Watching Juju holding a big bundle, Song Ciyu decided to let her wait at the carriage first. After Juju said hello, she left first. Junjun followed behind Song Ciyu and tentatively asked, "What else does Miss want to see?" "I have followed the butler several times before to buy, and most of the places I know. The shops on this street should be quite expensive, right? I'm not sure if the original owner's private money is enough. Within a radius of 2 miles, led by Jinsifang, each shop is no less than 3,000 taels, and most street shops further away are priced at 1 or 2,000 taels. Outside of Huaqiong Street, the most expensive shop is only within 100 taels." Junjun blurted out that she indeed had a deep understanding of this place. Song Ciyu reached out and pulled Junjun to an empty corner, glanced left and right several times, and then took a ticket from her sleeve. "Miss, what are you doing?" Junjun saw a handful of silver bills and was a little shocked, covering them even tighter. "Count quickly." Song Ciyu thrust it into Junjun's hand. Upon hearing these words, Junjun dared not delay either. She quickly counted them quietly, knowing how much silver there was here. After counting, Junjun immediately handed it back to Song Ciyu. "Miss, there are a total of 6,000 silver taels here." 6,000 silver taels. Damn it. Her father, the original owner, is truly a great treacherous minister. Surprisingly, there was only so much money given casually before the farewell. No wonder that the original lord has nothing to fear in the palace. Her family is really awesome. However, after she got married, her prime minister father chose to return home in glory. Although he still had a lot of influence in the court, he knew he was already a thorn in the imperial power. In order to protect the entire prime minister's mansion, he would never step into the imperial city again. However, in the eyes of Song Ciyu, he was greedy but not addicted. This would be the most right thing he did in his life. "Take half of it first and take me to buy a store. It's not a problem to get a shop on Huaqiong Street on the 17th. However, this money is a bit dark, and she will definitely do more good in the future." "Buying a shop?" Junjun exclaimed in surprise. After all, the master is a princess and there is no need to do business. "Miss, do you want to do business?" Song Ciyu nodded unreservedly at Junjun and said, "Cheng, cough, the silver banknotes given by my father will eventually be used up, and the money from the royal family will eventually belong to the royal family. Therefore, I must have circulating silver money in my hands. This is also for future preparation." "But, Junjun frowned and looked at her, unsure of what to say for a moment. "I didn't listen to what I said." Song Ciyu knew what she was thinking, but she just reached out and patted her shoulder to show her peace of mind. "I dare not. Zhen immediately shook her head, she was just worried. Let's go then. On the other side, Zhu sat in front of the carriage, guarding the boring baggage and waiting for the master and servant to return. As it was already Shinshur, the figures of Song Ciyu and her companions slowly appeared, and Zhu saw them and immediately welcomed them. Miss, you've come back, I'm a bit worried now. The sadness in Zhu's eyes was covered by joy due to Song Ciyu's appearance, and it was evident that she was very worried about Song Ciyu. Zhu looked left and right, but couldn't see anything else in their hands. When the three of them got on the carriage, Zhu couldn't help but ask, Miss, haven't you bought the item you like? Zhen pouted at Zhu, how could it be? Since I left the mansion, I naturally have to spend money. I'll let you know when I go back. Song Ciyu played tricks, making Zhu's heart itch, but she also knew the truth that many people have different eyes. The three of them, along with the coachman, rushed back to the Prince Yuan's mansion in Yushur. Zhen, how much money is left for buying clothes? You can go to the bank to pay for it. It's already prime time, and the prince should also have his own meals. After you finish, go to the bank and ask them to prepare some food to take to our courtyard. Song Ciyu said as she walked. Zhu, holding the bundle, will come back with me first. Zhen, Zhu. It's madam. What's wrong, madam? Zhu followed behind Song Ciyu and saw her suddenly stop. She thought something was wrong and quickly asked. I suddenly remembered that I had to go to the palace to attend the flower banquet tomorrow. Qin Heyuan will be waiting for me at the east gate at noon, and I won't be able to come back by noon. Song Ciyu frowned and said, forgetting everything Qin Heyuan had told her before. Alright, I'll give you some silver coins when I get back to the house. Tomorrow Qin will come, and you can hand it over to him to use this money to treat his younger brother's illness. Then, in 2 or 3 days at the same time, he will come to the palace to find me. The matter of entering the palace cannot be delayed, so we can only see Qin later. However, speaking of it, meeting Qin is even more important to her, as it is one of the important guarantees for her future beautiful life. Madam. Zhu heard that she was going to give the bad boy broken silver and immediately pouted, that Qin is from an unknown background. After all, he is just a thief. Why is madam so attentive to him? Song Ciyu looked at Zhu with a displeased expression on her face and smiled helplessly. How could she explain this? She couldn't say she knew that Akin's future was actually a wealthy merchant. You will know in the future, in short, I will bring him to my side and cultivate him well. Song Ciyu thought it over and could only say so. Don't you want to know what I bought when I went out this time? There is a better way to change the topic. Zhu nodded and said, I thought that madam had been with Zhen for a long time, thinking that I had bought too many items and couldn't bring them back. I also wanted to find madam and you, but ended up seeing madam return empty-handed. I went to buy a shop with Zhen and will take you to take a look in a few days, Song Ciyu whispered, getting close to her ear. Sure enough, when she heard these words, Zhu and Zhen's expressions were exactly the same. Miss, why, do you want to do business? Song Ciyu also reached out and patted Zhu's shoulder as if treating Zhen to show comfort, Dezhou. In a few years, there will be war and chaos in Dezhou, and peaceful days will not last long. There will be many wars and famines. She needs to earn more silver before that, and then she will hoard a few granaries of food. Doing business is the quickest way to earn money. My father is no longer in the imperial city, and we have to rely on ourselves for everything. Don't worry, I have carefully considered your wife. Perhaps moved by her words, Zhu remained silent for a while before slowly nodding her head. However, madam. Song Ciyu. What's going on? Zhu said, Madam, you can't call the prince's name directly anymore. If someone from the side hears you, it's time to chew your tongue behind your back. Song Ciyu. This damn rule, when will she be able to live an unforgettable life? End of this chapter.